cold doesn't ruin your garden in August. It flips a switch. Once soil temperatures dip below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 vegetables you already grow start turning their own starch into sugar. It's the same trick antifreeze uses to survive a freeze. That's not folklore. That's backed by university extension research and by a 2015 study in the journal Frontiers in Plant Science on how cold-hardy crops handle frost. These 5 crops are ready to plant now. By the time frost hits, you could be harvesting food sweeter than anything you grew all summer. We're covering all 5 today: spinach, beets, carrots, chard, and the one at the very end your grandmother would have called the real prize of a fall garden. By the time we get there, you'll understand exactly why. Every fact here comes from real university extension offices, South Dakota, Illinois, Maryland. Not guesswork. All 5 of these are common vegetables, safe for pets and grandkids. First up, the one you can get in the ground today: spinach. Spinach is the first one to get in the ground, and the timing matters. Mississippi State Extension recommends sowing 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost. That usually lands you in the first half of August for most zones. Just one overnight soak before planting softens the seed coat and speeds up germination. Here's why spinach can be tricky in August heat. Spinach seeds have a built-in defense called thermal dormancy. Once soil temperatures climb into the upper 70s, germination gets spotty. Push past the mid-80s and it stalls out almost completely. They're not dead, they're just waiting. If nothing pops up after a few days, don't panic. Try this. After soaking overnight, wrap the seeds in a damp paper towel. A couple of days tucked somewhere cool indoors does the trick. Once you see the first white root threads, they're ready to plant right away. That little trick alone can turn a bed of nothing into a bed full of spinach. Spinach gets you started, but beets are where the real efficiency kicks in. University of Maryland Extension puts the deadline for beets at 6 weeks before your first frost, though 8 weeks gives you a fuller root. Here's the part most people miss. One planting gives you 2 harvests. You get the roots, sweet and dense once the cold sets in, and you get the greens, which cook up nicely on their own. Roots left in the ground once the soil drops toward 40 degrees turn sweeter here too. Here's the one step that really matters: thinning your seedlings to a few inches apart. Skip it and the roots crowd each other and never size up properly. It takes about 30 seconds a row, and it's the difference between a real harvest and a disappointing one. That's item number 2. 2 down, 3 to go, and next up is the trickiest science of the whole list. Now here's the interesting part. Extension services in Maryland, Mississippi, and Utah word it differently, but they all land on the same window. Get seeds in the ground sometime in the first half of August, and you're covering nearly every one of these 5 crops at once. Now, let's talk carrots, because this is the one where most folks get it backwards. Carrots do best when they're direct seeded straight into the ground. Starting them in a tray and transplanting later usually backfires. Here's why this works. A carrot grows one single taproot. If that tip gets bent or blocked while it's young, the root forks and splits instead of growing straight down. Loosening your soil, clearing out rocks, and skipping fresh manure before you sow makes all the difference. That protects the taproot from the very start. Once your seeds are in, soil temperature does the rest of the work. SDSU extension research puts the sweetening point at right around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that, carrots start converting their stored starch into sugar. It's the exact same process we talked about at the top of this video. Now here's the interesting part. Extension offices in Illinois and West Virginia don't agree on much. But they agree on this. Leave your carrots in the ground through that first frost. The trick is waiting, not pulling them the moment they look ready. And this one's for those of you who already got your carrots in the ground weeks ago. The mistake isn't in the planting, it's pulling them too early. Back in the early 1980s, a farmer named Elliot Coleman started leaving carrots in the cold soil. He used an unheated hoop house on his farm in Harborside, Maine. He let them sit through the cold instead of rushing the harvest. Local kids started calling them candy carrots, and the story stuck. One gardener up in Minnesota says leaving carrots in through the first snow is the best trick she's ever picked up. A few inches of straw over the bed once the ground starts to cool does the trick. You'll be pulling out something a lot closer to candy than a vegetable. That's carrots. Beets and spinach get you started, and carrots reward patience. But chard is the one that keeps paying you back into next year. Swiss chard is what botanists call a biennial. It's built to grow for 2 full years, though most gardeners treat it as a one-season crop. University of Maryland Extension calls it semi-hardy. The leafy tops give up in a hard freeze, but the roots underneath can survive real cold. Here's the part that really matters. Once the leaves die back, the plant is best left in the ground. Cutting the leaves close to the crown comes first. Piling on 3 to 6 inches of straw or leaf mulch insulates the roots. All you need is that layer of mulch before the ground freezes hard. Many growing guides point to zone 6 and warmer for chard to survive winter this way. Do it right, and that same plant sends up fresh, new leaves again in spring. That's nearly a full year of harvest from one dirt-cheap packet of seeds. 4 down. And now, the one we've been building to. This is the plant your grandmother would have called the real prize of a fall garden. Kale. Here's why. Extension research from South Dakota and Oregon points to the same mechanism behind all 5 of these. A light frost pulls the bitterness out and pushes the sweetness in. Kale just keeps that going longer than the rest, holding on deep into real cold. Timing works out to about 2 months before your first frost, give or take. And kale gives you something the others don't: total flexibility. Direct seed it straight into the ground, or start it indoors and transplant it later. Either way works. That's it. A little row cover extends that even further. While the rest of the garden goes quiet for winter, kale just keeps producing, getting sweeter with every hard frost that hits it. So that's your list. Spinach and beets get you started fast. Carrots and chard reward a little patience. And kale, the real prize, keeps going long after everything else has quit, rain or shine. Here's the number that ties it all together: 40 degrees. That's the soil temperature where the sweetening really kicks in across nearly all 5 of these. One packet of seeds costs just a few dollars, a lot less than what you'd pay for pre-washed, frost-kissed greens at the store. A little more food, a little extra saved, and honestly, some fun out there too. Your neighbors will wonder how you're still pulling a harvest in December. By the time that first hard frost hits your yard, you could be walking out to a garden bed still full of color. Everyone else's sits bare and brown. If you're the kind of gardener who'd rather plant one more round than pack it in for the year, you belong here. I'm curious, what's your state or USDA zone, and which of these 5 are you planting first? Tell me in the comments. Happy gardening!